Eustratius of Sebaste was the chief archivist of a Roman province, and in the year 296, he walked into a courtroom to confess a crime punishable only by death. He had hidden his faith for years, serving Rome by day while praying to Christ in secret by night. He watched his closest friend tortured for that same faith, and instead of staying silent, he stepped forward into the light and confessed his own. Before the fire finally took him, 4 other men would follow him into death, one after another, each saying the same 3 words to the same judge: "I am a Christian." By the time this story ends, a general, a priest, 2 soldiers, and an ordinary citizen will have been beaten, mutilated, and executed within days of each other. History would remember them as one, the 5 Martyrs of Sebaste. He served the empire that would burn him. This is a story about what a hidden faith costs when it is finally spoken aloud. About the moment a man decides that silence, even safe silence, is no longer a life worth living. Chapter 1. The Archivist of Satala. In the closing years of the 3rd century, the Roman Empire stretched from the fog of Britain to the deserts of Syria, and one of its most efficient servants sat behind a desk in the small Armenian city of Satala, keeping the province's records in order. His name was Eustratius. Tradition remembers him as a scriniarius, a keeper of archives, and as a man of unusual education for a soldier's world, an orator whose words carried weight among the local Roman dignitaries. He was respected. He was trusted. He was, on paper, exactly what the empire wanted him to be. What Rome did not know was that Eustratius prayed to a crucified carpenter's son. He kept it quiet. Emperor Diocletian had launched the most severe persecution of Christians the empire had ever seen. Church buildings torn down, scriptures burned, believers stripped of rank and sometimes of life. A man in Eustratius's position had every reason to guard his secret. He had a career. He had status. He had, by every worldly measure, too much to lose. So he served. He filed his records. He said nothing. And somewhere beneath the surface of his ordinary days, he carried a quiet, private line of prayer he would return to again and again. "I magnify you, Lord." A small phrase, a private confession, spoken only to God, in a life built entirely around not being noticed. It would not stay private for long. Chapter 2. The Man in the Prison Cell. The persecution came to Satala in the person of a priest named Auxentius, a presbyter serving the local Christian community, and one of the first believers rounded up when the imperial governors Lysias and Agricolas began enforcing Diocletian's decree in the province. Auxentius was thrown into prison, and because he was a priest, a leader, an example, a man whose faith might encourage others to hold firm, the judges made certain his suffering was public. He was beaten. He was questioned. He was given every opportunity to renounce the name of Christ and return, unharmed, to his former life. He refused, every time. Eustratius watched this unfold from a position of relative safety. As a Roman official, he had access, standing, credibility, none of which Auxentius had anymore. He could have stayed at his desk. He could have kept filing his records and let the persecution pass him by, the way it passed by thousands of quiet believers who simply waited it out. Instead, according to the account preserved by the Eastern Church, Eustratius found he could not watch a friend suffer alone for a faith they shared in secret. Something in Auxentius's steadfastness, his refusal to trade the truth for safety, reached a decision in Eustratius that had likely been building for years. he walked into the presence of the governor Lysias, and he said the sentence that would end his career, his safety, and eventually his life. I am a Christian, too. Chapter 3. The Iron Sandals. The confession of a Roman official was not something the governors could quietly ignore. Eustratius was, by his own admission, exactly what the persecution was designed to root out: a man of rank who had betrayed the state religion for the illegal one. They tortured him first with beatings, then, in a detail preserved consistently across the old Eastern accounts of his martyrdom, his tormentors fitted iron sandals studded with sharp nails onto his feet and forced him to march in them mile after mile along the road to the neighboring town of Arabraca. Every step was designed to break him. Tradition holds that it did not. It was on that road, walking on nails with every stride, that Eustratius is remembered to have kept returning to the same private prayer he had carried quietly for years, no longer whispered in secret, but now spoken into the open air, in front of soldiers, in front of a watching crowd. I magnify you, Lord. What had once been a private phrase, for a man with everything to lose, had become something else entirely, a public act of defiance, offered in the middle of his own suffering. He arrived in Arabraca, still walking, still confessing, and his arrival would cost other people their silence too. Chapter 4. I am a Christian, like Eustratius. A soldier named Eugene had served in the same ranks as Eustratius, a comrade in arms, a man whose entire career depended on the same Roman loyalty Eustratius had just abandoned. When Eugene saw what was happening to his friend, he did not stay quiet either. He stood before the judge and declared himself a Christian as well. He paid for it in full. The accounts of his martyrdom describe savage cruelty, his tongue cut out for the words he had spoken, his hands and feet severed, and finally, his execution by the sword. Auxentius, the priest whose steadfastness had started the chain, was beheaded as well. And then came a man who had never claimed to be anyone extraordinary at all. His name was Mardarius. Not a soldier, not a priest, not an official. An ordinary citizen of Satala, watching from the roof of his own house as the condemned were marched through the streets toward their deaths. Tradition remembers that Mardarius had a wife. He had 2 young daughters. He had, in other words, the most ordinary reasons in the world to look away, to stay on his roof, to let other men be brave so he wouldn't have to be. He came down from that roof anyway. He said goodbye to his family, and he ran into the street after the condemned men, shouting the same declaration that had already cost 4 others everything. I am a Christian too, like Eustratius. He was hung upside down for it. And in his final moments, according to the prayer still attributed to him and preserved in Eastern Christian worship to this day, he prayed a line that begins, O Master, Lord God, Father Almighty, committing himself and his family to God's mercy before he died. 1 life had opened into 5. Chapter 5. The red hotbed. The last companion was the youngest, a soldier named Orestes, tried alongside the others, and, according to tradition, condemned to a particularly agonizing death. Stretched out on a bed of red-hot iron. Unlike the others, the old accounts do not hide his fear. As Orestes approached the glowing bed, tradition says he hesitated, gripped by the very human terror of what was coming. This is not smoothed over in the sources that remember him. And it is, in its own way, the most human moment in the entire account. Eustratius, already broken by his own torments, encouraged him. Whatever words passed between them have not survived history, but their effect has. Orestes made the sign of the cross, stepped onto the burning iron, and died there, his fear overcome in the final moment rather than before it. 4 companions were gone. 1 remained. Chapter 6. The Fire. Eustratius alone was sent on to the city of Sebaste itself, where the governor, Agricolas, who oversaw the wider region, handed down the final sentence: death by fire. On the 13th day of December, in the year 296, they led him out to be burned alive. This was the moment the private prayer of an archivist's ordinary days finally found its full and public voice. As he walked to the flame, Eustratius is remembered to have prayed aloud, in words the Eastern Church still reads at its Saturday midnight service to this day. I magnify thee exceedingly, O Lord, for thou hast regarded my lowliness. The same 3 words that had begun this entire story, I am a Christian, had led, step by step, iron sandal by iron sandal, to this. A man who once guarded a secret so carefully now speaking his loudest words as the fire was lit around him. He did not renounce it. He did not go quietly. He went into the flame, still magnifying the God he had once only dared to whisper to. Chapter 7. What was left behind? 5 men died within days of one another in the Armenian province of Sebaste. A Roman archivist, a priest, 2 soldiers, and a citizen who left his wife and daughters to join them. History remembers them together. The 5 Martyrs of Sebaste, commemorated every December on the anniversary of Eustratius's death. 2 of their prayers outlived the flames that took them. The words Eustratius spoke, walking into the fire, and the words Mardarius prayed, hanging upside down for his family, are still read today, centuries later, in the worship of the Eastern Church. A private man's private prayer, still spoken publicly, still carrying his name. What began as one official's quiet, hidden faith became, within the span of a single persecution, a chain reaction that could not be stopped by torture or fire. Auxentius's courage moved Eustratius. Eustratius's confession moved Eugene. Their example moved a man off his own rooftop and into the street, and the last, youngest of them found his courage in the final seconds before iron met flesh. None of them set out to inspire the others. Each of them was simply unwilling, when the moment came, to let someone else be faithful alone. Somewhere in your own life, there may be a truth you have kept carefully private, safe, quiet, costing you nothing. Eustratius kept his quiet for years too, until watching someone else's courage made his own silence impossible to keep. History forgot them, but they were faithful, and now it's our turn to remember. Subscribe to Forgotten Heroes of Faith.